A lot of the concepts that I'm talking about here can also create confusion in the mind if you've never heard of them before, or if this is the first time you're hearing concepts or seeing concepts like this. It's not to terrify anybody. You are the God body of your reality. You are in control. You have everything you need within you. Whatever you see throughout this video is going to be activating you. It's going to be activating your neurons to the magical frequency. On tonight's episode, we are going to be expanding upon some of the other episodes that I created already with more visuals, and I hope to actually put them up beside me or here someplace, not just on the video screen. I do love that, but I'll probably leave that for reactions. And hello, if you are new here, my name is Chrissy. I am a simulation theorist, and also your friendly neighborhood pseudoscientist. As you will see in here, I don't have any formal background in science. I did go to college, and I did go through all your normal science classes that you would in high school and college, but I am by no means some sort of a scientist. This is all just stuff that I've learned throughout the years, watching different videos, lectures, reading research papers, etc., etc. So the things that you are about to see are based upon just different theories, hypotheses, whatever you want to call it, to try to understand how this entire simulated environment works down to its smallest molecular structure, down to its quantum view, and to be able to take this information and utilize it, not just understand it, but understand how to take it and then use it in your everyday reality so you can have fun with the game. Because let's start out with that. This is the reason why we are all here. It is a game. It is for fun. It all is coming out of your mind. It is all illusion, as they say. It is Maya that they have been writing about since the beginning of time. This is just all a dream within a dream from the Godhead. We are all pieces of consciousness in this simulated environment that has been created as a playground, if you want to call it that, to be able to have experiences. And this machine is neutral. It does not care whether you, the avatar, deem something as good or bad. It sees everything as just an experience to be had. I personally believe that there is a base environment outside of what we currently see. The brain is structuring our reality, the processes, and if we step out of that structure, that's when we have psychedelic experiences. We are able to have very strange visions. We are able to almost see the 2D of the simulation. We are outside of it, almost at the God consciousness level, where we can create will. If you believe in all of the D's, like 1D, 2D, 3D, 4D, 5D, you would be at one of the levels where you could see the code of the simulation, where you can do different things maybe in this environment or just be at a different realm altogether. Very strange looking, that would blow your mind. That's how it is if you are on any type of psychedelic. We project out from this hologram that is the Big Bang. We have the Big Bang, that is the projection from the Godhead, and that made all of the ethers with the universe, and then the Earth simulation. And then we are avatars on the Earth simulation. That's why we have specific laws like gravity. There have been people over space and time that quote unquote have bent the rules of this reality, and I'm not trying to do that on this channel. So if you're trying to figure out how to bend like gravity, I'm not claiming to know how to do this. I'm just trying to articulate and then also show in vivid imagery what this could possibly look like, so we are all at a further understanding of how we can play the game better in such a way that we are winning all of the time. That it's elusive on purpose. The things that I'm going to talk about are not to be taken as truth fact 100% all the time. Fact check this stuff for yourself. I'm not claiming to be a universal guru on all of this stuff. This is things that have come to me through deep contemplative thought, and also, like I mentioned earlier, reading, ingesting lots of data and information just like a computer would, and then feeding it back out onto what I think is going on here. In Earth, we have avatars, and that's how we are projecting this reality through our consciousness. That's how we have the electricity that lights up our avatar to be able to have consciousness, to be able to intercept the thoughts that come into our mind, into our brain, into our soul, whatever you want to call it. We have this field, this toroidal field, this electrical field. There is something that is surrounding us, electromagnetic field, that the simulation is reading. And it is through all these different things that come together and send out this ultimate frequency or whatever vibration to the sim that intercepts what needs to be rendered next. So, for example, we have our 5 senses, and we are using all of those on an ongoing basis to be able to interpret the environment around us. That's what our brain is also doing too. That's why when earlier I mentioned about psychedelics, when you do psychedelics, it disrupts that and you start seeing the background of the code. And that's why it can be very trippy and mind blowing, because if you're not prepared for that, you don't know what it is. And it gives you this crazy sense that you don't know what's going on. And then fear can often take over. And fear is something that is pre-built into our avatar through our DNA and all this jazz, our genetic makeup. It is fight or flight on purpose to be able to keep us safe in the sim. This was so we don't kill ourselves, as I like to say. So we don't throw ourselves prematurely off the side of a cliff without knowing. It gives us a sense of fear, and it also helps us navigate the environment and not do anything extremely crazy to put ourselves in potentially a quote unquote compromising situation before we need to be. Everything experiences entropy. The simulation is created as such because it does travel through patterns and cycles, just like you see ups and downs in all patterns and cycles. You can see this in nature, you can see this in stocks, you can see this in health, you can see this in just anything in general. There is ebb and flow of life, and the simulation works just the same way. There is entropy to be had. So things do eventually die off, but up until that point, we are sending out all of these signals to the simulation at all times through what we are perceiving through all of these senses that I mentioned, through your visual eyes, through your sense of smell, through your sense of taste, touch, all of the things that make up your avatar. And a note on epigenetics, that more to come out on this, but it is possible to potentially turn things off and on in the avatar. They're doing more and more research on this. They use medicines now to maybe band-aid or sometimes fix things, but there is the possibility where there is maybe sound therapies, different therapies of the mind that have worked. For example, the placebo effect. There's all these different things. I don't want to go down that hole too far, but I do believe there is light to be shed in this area. It is all connected. This is all one. Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about this. Dr. Bruce Lipton talks about this, and I'm sure there are people who call some of their work scams and hoax. And I'm not trying to claim that every little aspect of what these people say is exactly right. It's what resonates with you, because I'm sure there's pieces of it when you hear it, you're like, wow, that probably could be true. So let's move on here. We have an avatar that resonates these different things. That has a biofield that lets out into the simulation, and then there's neurons in our brain, and then that's when I want to kind of hone in and bring a microscope in on how it works when we are attempting to shift the sim at such a level where it's granular. We'll move it in really close here, where all communication is in superposition in the neurons, in the synapses that sit in the space that sits in the synapses in between the neurons, the synapses space. It sits in superposition, and the communications are not complete until an observer, which is the avatar. That's where enter consciousness as the avatar, and the avatar is running the subconscious, and that the subconscious is just things that are running on autopilot. You are not running your heart, you are not running your bodily functions consciously, you are not on an ongoing basis thinking about how many times you need for your heart to beat. You are not thinking about how quickly your blood needs to flow. So that is considered your subconscious, or I don't know, maybe your unconscious, whatever you want to call it. That has whatever amount of names you want to pick for it, but whatever that functionality is, where everything is on autopilot, that is considered what they consider the subconscious. Then you have conscious, where it is those five senses that you're using, the things to navigate your environment. And those intermix. And the more you can affect your subconscious to do the things you want in the simulation, the more it will shift for you, because you will automatically start doing these things. So when the communication is in superposition, the neurotransmitters, the communication packets between the dendrites, those all have information. And when you observe that information, you make a decision, you observe something, you make hyper vivid imagery, and it takes some sort of like what feels to be a vibrational energetic copy in those communications, and they're sent back and forth, and then those copies are sent out and they're entangled and are with the simulation, which will eventually render that thing. And a note on rendering: rendering may not always be this scary thing to people where it's like, oh, I have a thought and then suddenly it's going to pop up. No, that's not the way it works. There are other things at play here. Your actions from the avatar. What are you doing, thinking, saying on an ongoing basis? Are you engaging with all the time? Those ongoing actions is what's probably going to render the simulation. I'm not saying that other thoughts may not render. They could be rendering in ways that you may just not notice. You could have some thoughts and they could just render in you turning a page in a magazine and seeing something that affiliated with that thought, and then nothing ever renders again and it completely goes away because you don't ever think about it again. And that could be an instant rendering or an instant moment of your simulation shifting. But that doesn't always happen like that. If you want something like a bigger manifestation or a bigger shift in your life, you may want your dream car, but it keeps showing up in magazines. That's not where you want it. You want it in your garage. So it's a different type of visualization or rendering in the simulation. And that's what we're trying to hone in on here. That's the magic of the fun of the simulation, of trying to figure out how to get the car in the garage, not to just program our reticular activating system to see the red car, but to acquire the red car and then have it in the place that you want it physically, right? Out of the mind into the 3D. You have your thoughts and they are emitting this electrical frequency. And that's where the whole negative and positive comes in. Emotional charge, which would be positive, neutral, or negative, acts like a magnet. Positive charge, high belief, excitement equals pulling your manifestations in fast. When you are in a neutral charge, which is detachment and trust, it allows effortless receiving, which is another fantastic way to have the sim shift for you. When you have a negative charge, which could be affiliated with doubt, effort, struggle, just whatever you affiliate to what that negative feeling inside of you would be, that creates resistance and delays. And what's interesting about this is the more desperately you want something, the more the simulation delays it, because it's like you're creating some sort of resistance or some sort of feeling of want. So it stays with the feeling of want rather than the feeling of having. It stays with the feeling of desperation, not the feeling of having. And that's a really weird concept to ingest at first. That definitely can create a lot of confusion in the mind. And a lot of the concepts that I'm talking about here can also create confusion in the mind if you've never heard of them before, or if this is the first time you're hearing concepts or seeing concepts like this. It's not to terrify anybody. You are the God body of your reality. You are in control. You have everything you need within you. Whatever you see throughout this video is going to be activating you. It's going to be activating your neurons. It's going to be pushing you to the next level to understand your environment and simulation at large. So, the more you watch content like this, the more your neurons will grow to understand this type of information, and then you will be able to maneuver that much smoother and kind of game genie your way through the sim. But again, it's not always this predictable thing. The game is elusive. If you knew what was going to happen at every turn of the game, it would be no fun. If you knew what every single opponent was going to be, if you knew what every single weapon was going to be, if you knew everything, it wouldn't be fun. It's much more fun to be able to move about and have a fun experience. Our bodies interacting with energy, our bodies interact with other avatars, and I'm sure you've been around other avatars that either make you feel great or that make you feel not so good. I'm sure everybody here has experienced this before. Also are very sensitive to sound, things like music, binaural beats, tuning forks, sound bowls, things like grounding and ASMR. All of those things do something to our bodies, do something to the frequency around us. That's why all of those things work very well when they are incorporated into just meditative or deep contemplative thoughts or inner awareness practices or whatever. When you're doing meditation shifts, when you're doing sats at night, state akin to sleep is in the Neville community, which is the hypnagogic state, falling asleep with this imagery, with this visualization to be able to crystallize it, they like to say. And let's talk a little bit about toroidal fields here, because I want to do a little bit of a comparison here that might seem strange, but it might close some gaps for some folks or maybe explain some things. So, a black hole essentially pulls in energy, light, and matter. It would represent absorption, destruction, and the unseen, while white holes expel energy, light, and information, representing creation, projection, and the visible world. Together, black and white holes function as universal in breath and out breath, constantly breaking down and reconstruction reality in real time. If consciousness is the observer, then these black and white holes could be the mechanics that translate our thoughts into reality. The collapse of the wave function, where possibilities become actual events, could operate similarly, meaning you're constantly pulling reality from the void and projecting it into form. So let's see what this looks like a little bit. And all of the things in my video, I've tried to put a representation of where they came from at some point in the slide. So I found this, I think, on Reddit, and it was just this really interesting picture of what it would be from an entire toroidal field, I guess, of what the universe would be from a past, present, future, time, space projection, but outside of this reality, there is no time, space. This is a human construct. Remember that everything within this reality is coming from you. You are the God body head. You are a piece of God. You are all one. We are all connected. So all of this information that we're talking about is from consciousness. Math is from consciousness. It came from somebody. It's not here because we know that God came down and gave this to us. So just something to think about. And I love this because it shows exactly where the event horizon is around a black hole, to where that could be compared to our neurons and the way they fire. But let's move on to some of the things you're seeing on the right hand side here. I want to have a special shout out to Champstar for sending me this toroidal shot. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a really awesome image, and I wanted to incorporate it into this slide deck as well because it really matters with all of this as well. Also told me about the rice experiment, which was really cool because within a day somebody else came up on my feed and explained it, and I had never even heard of it. And again, that's a sim putting it in front of me to understand it. But that's another form of entanglement. It's the same type of experiment that was done with the ice. The same gentleman that did the ice experiment did the rice. Spoke negatively over one bowl of rice, positively, and then just left one bowl alone. The one bowl started to rot that was left alone. The one that was spoken into started to get like black and decrepit and it was disgusting. And then the one that was positive started to ferment and started to make like nice rice dessert or whatever the hell it would have made. So that again goes to show if there's intentions and vibrations and whatever have you over something, it will resonate with that, and then it will send out whatever frequency, and then you will see that shift through time in this environment out into the 3D. You see physically the manipulation of the rice at different stages depending on how they were spoken to. Talk about these crystals because I think Joe D talks about crystals in the brain too, about when you're getting to that like Kundalini awakening, all that energetic stuff that I talked about in my last video. It seems to me as if you're sending almost like a photon through, and then you're visualizing, hyper visualizing on that photon what you would want. It would be like whatever stories you're telling yourself or whatever imagery. And the mind likes to really see things in images, in movies, games, in visual form. That's why also I have these visual pictures here this time, because the brain works best this way. So if you're able to vividly see something and like burn the picture in your brain, I think maybe it has a photon that sends through these crystals and it like imprints an energetic frequency on it from whatever thing you're projecting. If you're telling stories, you want this specific thing out in the sim, you are resonating on an excited feeling during that visualization. You could be imprinting that photon and it goes through that crystal and it entangles. Like at that point, it creates something where it creates double photons and entangles with the rest of the simulation. So you are essentially creating photons of whatever it is that you want that entangle. They create communication. The photons are packets of communication. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But that's why that is, because you are basically imprinting a communication on these photons. And when it bursts through these crystals or whatever, it sends out these frequencies through these entangled photons and these imprinted whatevers through whatever you're creating in your mind's eye to the sim, and then it eventually renders. You see, that would be the moment of free will. If we have it, I don't want to get into the argument of that, because so many people think so many different things about this. But for me, it's just choosing the version of reality that you want to shift into. It's not necessarily attempting to control everything. That's not the point of the simulation. The point of the simulation is not to come and control everything. It is to come and play a game, to be able to experience reality the way that you want to, and not be controlled by outer sources or be under the illusions of society at large telling you how to live your life. Breaking free from conformity, realizing that there's higher consciousness, that we are living in this simulated reality that we can have some sort of creative powers in, or just powers that we can shift into whatever reality we want to, and that we can do things in the 3D the way that we want to. We can move the way we want to. And of course, I do believe in the golden rule as well. But with everything said, let's move on to what that means for eyeball. I want to talk a little bit about how the eyeball works and all of this, because I recently stumbled on information from a gentleman that actually saw different codes in lasers when he impressed them against the wall. And for me, it's because the light is entering your eye, and light carries information. And that's the way we're using an eye and that checkerboard theory I had before, to be able to spin this out into the holographic projection at large. So this gentleman, his name is Dango Thoughts. He has something called the Discovery. You do technically have to take a hit of DMT, I believe. But once you do, you would look at a laser against a wall, while this laser, I think, goes through a crystal. Everything goes through a dang crystal. And we use crystals in everything. That's an actual factual thing. I don't think I'm being a pseudoscientist with that. So once you shoot it through and you see the projection on the wall, you would see, I'm going to show my best imagery of what this would look like. You would see this different type of hieroglyphic or language that is in that light. And that just further proves the theory of this being a simulation, and the fact that light carries information in these different ways, and our eyes are intercepting this information to be able to project into our reality and make sense of what's going on here at large. That's why when we disconnect from it, it can look very psychedelic and crazy and just out of control. We can't put our perception or understand what's going on when we see that side of the simulation. So I do believe the brain uses biophotons to create images. This stuff that you're hearing today, I'm not sure if you've heard it in such a way or have seen it projected in such a way before. But let me know in the comments if any of this seems like it could make sense, or if any of this resonates with you. Into a little bit about the pineal gland, because Joe D talks a lot about the pineal gland. And this is supposed to be like your third eye. And the way that I really look at it is another area of the brain that has those crystals in it. So I think it's another way we are sending communications back and forth and being able to intercommunicate with different parts of the brain and different parts of the simulation at large. That's probably why we have things like intuition, telepathy, ultra fast processing with certain individuals, lines together with all of the theories that I have wrapped into this whole thing. Into a couple of real life examples that have happened for me, so we can wrap this up so you can understand exactly how to use this to be able to make your reality the best reality it can be. So the other day, I had a situation where I had discounted nail polish, but it happened in such a way where it should not have technically been discounted. On a nail polish at the supermarket, and I knew it was probably expensive, but I didn't think too much about how much it will cost. I just observed at the moment in the aisle two different realities where I would just buy it at that moment and not care about whatever cost it rang up as. Like, I knew it could be like in the $12 to $13 because those nail polishes could run that much. But then I observed another reality where I would go to someplace like an Ulta or a TJ Maxx and probably only pay like $6 for it. Well, I figured I don't care, and I didn't have any insane emotions over each outcome, nor did I think about it throughout the rest of the shopping trip. I just thought it'd be cool if I could have paid like $5 for it or whatever, but I probably wouldn't even pay that in Ulta anyway, and I want it, so who cares? And money is not a thing. I'm not going to get upset about the money. That's where the frequency part is about, like, your beliefs, your background beliefs about the thoughts that you always have going on in your avatar start to kick into play. Because if I would have had the type of mentality where I would have said, like, no, this is scary, fear's kicking in, and I won't have enough money, let me put this back, the outcome that I received would have never been received if I would have not put the nail polish in the cart. So I put the nail polish in the cart and not cared about the outcome. And I observed a couple of potential avenues that the sim could have rendered to me. I did not think of every single potentiality. I just basically thought of a couple and then thought of what would be nice to have happened, but did not get really upset over it and fuming or pissed or really excited. I stayed pretty neutral about the whole thing, but had an inner knowing that it didn't matter what it costed, that it was okay and I could buy it anyway. So I went about the rest of my trip, and the simulation ended up rendering a better avenue where the cashier ended up giving it to me for $5, probably cheaper than I would have even gotten it if I went to someplace like an Ulta. So the simulation rendered an even better reality just based upon the whole concept of me observing it, coming up with realities, and also observing the fact that it'd be nice if I could pay cheaper, but I'm okay with whatever reality is placed in front of me. And then the sim rendered the reality that I paid the $5. So that is one way you can create manifestations instantly in the simulation. If you think about it, it was being entangled, and that specific cashier was also entangled with the simulation to be able to create that scenario. It happened to me with boxes of baking soda. I was purchasing boxes of baking soda, and I was observing the realities of whether or not I could have that specific baking soda. And I thought, again, wouldn't it be nice if I had the baking soda? But if I couldn't, no big deal. I'll get the regular size box for 98 cents or whatever and use it and just order another box later. No big deal. It would have been cool, but they're going to take 3 or 4 days. I have to special ship them. That's kind of a lot for some baking soda. I'll just take the smaller box to have delivered today. So I went with that. Again, no big deal. Put the small one in the box, went about my business, went about my shopping trip. And lo and behold, what was delivered was the two big boxes that I originally wanted with the small box, and I didn't have to pay for the two larger boxes. So that was a moment, again, of observation and entanglement, because the universe entangled with the thoughts of me having those two boxes of baking soda, and they ended up coming that day. Another instance of manifestation where I was observing those realities, but also put intention that it would be nice for the reality to go a certain way. Sometimes when we do visualize negative things, but we have other intentions where we want something to go a certain way, the simulation still renders in our favor, if you will. So it's very important that you recognize that it's all about your inner beliefs and your self-talk, your thoughts, your actions, what you are falling to asleep with at night, what are you waking to up at in the morning. It's all about your directed energetic focus and what you're emitting. So are you constantly thinking about negative circumstances or things not working out your way and then emitting frequencies with that on an ongoing basis? You could potentially be inviting that to render in your situation, and it's up to you to understand whether or not that is render. The point where you're selecting, choosing, aligning, deciding, picking, shifting, accepting, jumping, whatever you want to say, you are choosing a different reality from the one that you are in. Some people will sit in that reality until they get what they want. For me, I drop the importance a lot of times. And that I think is important from the perspective of the simulation does enjoy balance. Just like we discussed with things like Dean Zealand's pendulum, things in the sim like balance. So anything is possible. It can come up with an infinite amount of potentialities to be observed. That's why when everything remains in superposition, like those communications, those neurotransmitters remain in superposition, that's how the simulation remains until we observe it, and then we act participatory and give out all of our things as we do from the avatar. Let's talk a little bit about how we can activate this, how we can activate our reticular activating system to show us things. It works in imagery. Try to show your mind's eye, and this could be during meditation. You could do this so many different ways. I have other visualization videos, but show your mind what you want. You can put pictures on the back of your phone. There's so many different ways that you can visualize. If you have aphantasia or something like this, you can practice how to visualize. If you are blind, I'm sure there's other ways you can practice this, like feeling states or just different things to be able to get you into the vibratory mode of what you are looking the sim to render you into, because it speaks through these communication packets of energy that is imprinted through whatever you are imprinting on those vibratory signals through your ongoing actions, thoughts, frequencies, visualizations, imagination. What are you constantly imagining in your mind? This will program your reticular activating system to look for the red car. If you're always imagining a red car, your reticular activating system will start to look for all of those in the sim for you automatically. And then you can take actions to be able to get the red car in the sim. And then the sim will shift for you. Somebody might give you money to get the car. Somebody might have a car to give you. You might just have extra money laying around at a certain amount, and somebody is able to sell you it at that specific price. There's so many different ways to observe your reality, and this is where the whole part of like living in the now and surrendering comes in, because the simulation can surrender anything to you at any time under any circumstances, because there's an infinite amount of possibilities. So if you surrender to what the simulation renders to you, because it's listening to your intentions. That's why when people say the universe is conspiring, it's because the sim can feel your vibrations and it understands what you're trying to emit. So it is going to then shift for you and show you what you want. If you don't do this and you allow yourself to be hypnotized by the outside world, the simulation will render simulacra to you. You will just get copies of copies of copies. You will get things that are of the same nature over and over again. You will see the same people. You will see the same places. You will see the same information. you will render the same events, you will render the same type of outcomes unless you are conscious of this and realize that you are in this illusion, this dream state, that you can maneuver in this environment as such that you please within the confines, obviously, of the earth realm. Don't do anything that crazy where you are getting yourself arrested or killed, because those are potentialities in this environment. This is what makes this environment fun. When I say there's an infinite amount of potentialities, I don't mean that automatically jump and defy gravity every time. If you are on a God body status to where you can do this, didn't Jesus do things of this nature? That's up to you. I don't personally go to achieve these types of things. To what you want to do, type of level of game status or level you're trying to unlock. Remember to observe all of the potentialities that you want, which means to just look at the life the way you want it to go. And then you will be collapsing the wave functions to render those potentialities to you. And not everything may go your way every time. It may render in different ways. And I don't want people to be petrified that no matter what you think it's going to automatically render. It may not. It could be somebody just saying something in passing to you, and that's how it renders. It's all up to the simulation and how you resonate and how you are act, think, feel, just everything on an ongoing basis. Why they always say, as within, so without. The reality is projected from the inside to the out. What you have on your inner will form and harden your outer. I know everybody enjoyed this video because there's nothing else quite like it on the internet. There's no other visuals quite like this on the internet. I hope the theories and concepts and ideas that I have put in front of you today help you hone in and get a tighter grip on how to just move and shift your reality into ways that you're just making it your dream state all the time, that it is your autopilot function to just always get what you want. Or when things don't go your way, you look at them in such a way that is optimistic, that is positive in nature, where you can always find a solution. It's only just a game, and there's always a way to find the Rubik's Cube solution. There's always a way. It just needs to be found, and the simulation at large will render those results to you. If you just trust the process, ask it, you will find that you can have your reality go exactly how you want it for the most part. Of course, we all have challenges, ebbs and flows, but you can stay on a steady state of flow where things are just coming into you. You are in receive mode, and the simulation renders the game the way you want it to. So until the next time, guys, I hope you all continue to manifest magic and resonate on your highest frequency. Mwah. Bye, guys. Love you all.